Hi guys, good afternoon. Just a quick little bit of feedback. Has this been a successful day so far? Yes. Yes? We should keep doing it?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. As Carolyn said, my name is Charles. I run Valark Financial Services up in downtown Hartford. And we tell our folks that we specialize in the college funding to retirement transition. And for a lot of the families we talk with, it truly is a transition. First of all, it's flat out panic mode about how they are going to fund and pay for college. But then second, as they get into the pipeline and the kids leave the house and all that money that they had spent on college funding now suddenly becomes available to put the finishing touches on their retirement, that's the process that we help our families with. The vast majority of our clients we meet through presentations that we do at schools just like yours. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about a story about how we got to this place, how our firm came to be developed, but also share with you some best practices, some boots on the ground ideas that I think you may be able to take back and use right away, but also share with you what I call 5 essential dilemmas. And I think there might be more, but I only want to deal with 5 today. This whole idea, this concept started years ago when I was working with a gentleman named Mick Endersby. And Mick was the federal director of TRIO programs. This is a guy who testifies before Congress. This is a guy who kept the free in FAFSA. And time goes by, he formed a consulting firm. I marched in his army for a number of years. And between the two of us, we developed and designed a number of the concepts that led to the firm that we have now and the strategies and tools that we use with our clients and friends. And one of the things that we identified really early on is that as a community, we do a fantastic job of preparing students for college academically. But we think we have a ways to go to help them with the hardest part, which is really paying for it. Some background, I've been doing this for about 27 years now. So I'd like to say I've seen it all. We average about 60 presentations per year at high schools, myself and my team. And we do offer free consultations to those folks that request it. We're not doing a sales presentation. We do offer follow-up, and we think the follow-up is important. If we have a financial aid night presentation that talks about financial aid or how to fill out the form, and we leave the parents at that point with no follow-up beyond that, we've probably done them a disservice, because we've given them just enough information to be confused. But if we can deliver follow-up services to them at their home, at their kitchen table that says, great, let's take that massive amount of information and now deliver it to a strategy that you can deploy in your family, I think we've done them a great service. And it's important to have that follow through. In fact, we average about 800 requests for follow-up per year. I mean, that's a massive amount of activity, but it really talks to, I think, the demand that there is from the parents in your schools and your communities for this level of attention and follow-up. I can tell you from our experience, parents are drowning in information. They've got information from everywhere. And what we want to do is take that massive amount of information and boil it down to boots on the ground strategies that they can use in their family and their household to be financially successful. And we love to partner with the schools to help do that. 27 years of experience has given us a little bit of feedback to say, what can we expect? What are some observations that we've learned along the way? And one of them is, and you may see this in your own homes or in the families and friends that you talk to, college is rarely saved for at a time that it would make a meaningful difference. We would love to believe that families are starting their savings right from birth, right? They open up their 529 plans, they start putting money into it, and they have a wonderfully funded college plan by the time they get there. We know that's not true. We're drowning, as parents, I'm a parent, in our personal whitewater. We're trying to manage daycare, trying to buy a house, save for our retirement, health care costs, let alone paying for clothes and having 3 teenagers eating out of the fridge, am I right? So it's a challenge, I think, and you know, we go to talk to financial advisor or even hear on the news, we need to do more to save for college. Right, got it. That's not a message people want to hear. They don't want to hear that they have to save and invest more to make college affordable until they get into flat out panic mode as a senior parent at your high school college funding night. Parents often have a false expectation of what their eligibility for financial aid is. How many people remember the Guaranteed Student Loan Program? Gone, right? I say that in presentations, and you can see the color come out of parents' faces at that point. They really have this expectation that if they choose to go to a Quinnipiac, Northeastern, Boston College, Syracuse, Rochester, that there will be wheelbarrows full of money coming up to help them pay for that expensive school. Most financial advisors don't work in the college funding market. They are more interested in the $500,000 wealth management IRA or 401k account. They are not interested in talking to parents about saving a few $100s a month into a college savings plan. Why? Because they don't earn a lot to do that. And it takes a tremendous amount of study in this field to understand the playing field for college funding. They don't want to put forth the effort for just a small amount of results. So if they have a financial advisor at all, parents are not receiving the guidance that we would like them to receive to make college realistic, doable, and affordable at a time that it would make a meaningful difference. And as you know, school counselors are not licensed, positioned, or insured to give financial advice. If we were to summarize what I call the dichotomy of all of this, there's a perception of what we think should happen. That parents should receive college guidance and planning from their financial advisors at an early age, skilled advice, practical advice that helps them to become effective at college planning. The reality is financial professionals are not only working in this market, if they are, they're not necessarily giving best-in-class advice. And so as much as we might want, you and I might not want to take on the responsibility of this task, unfortunately, in many cases, it falls to us. I'm just interested in a quick show of hands. How many of you have had a parent come to your office and ask you a financial question related to paying for college? That's what I thought. So we unfortunately, or whatever it may be, we are kind of the deliverers of this piece of information. Parents are looking to us for financial aid guidance as well as school choice guidance. We provide the financial aid night education, as I said, for about 60 high schools, and we very commonly see attendance in the hundreds at these presentations. That tells me there's a tremendous demand for a how to pay for college program. This was in Simsbury of 2015. Consistently, Simsbury, Glastonbury, West Hartford, many of the schools that you would think are affluent, communities that are affluent, are some of the highest attenders for a college funding night presentation. So we believe in responsible and ethical partnerships with counseling communities to help accomplish this mission for our most important client, which is the college-bound family. I'd like to share with you a few best practices that we've learned along the way. Over and over again, we hear from schools, gosh, I wish we could get this message out more. I wish more parents would come to attend. So we've had a little bit of results on this over time, and we found 2 or 3 strategies that we think are really important that you can roll out immediately in your programs at schools. The first is the name of the rose. What do we call this thing? What we call the program, as you know, defines a message in someone's mind. Words are a storehouse of images. And when we say a certain word, that creates an image in our mind of something. And when we say financial aid night, what is the image that is created in a parent's mind? Number 1, that there's financial aid that's available. Number 2, that they will qualify for it. And number 3, you're going to show them all the ways that they can get lots of free money at this presentation. We believe nothing could be further from the truth. And that this may be a very disastrous outcome for a family that comes expecting there is financial aid, hears about Pell Grants, now the one loan, all the different sources of support out there. What's the problem? They won't qualify for any of it. And so we have to, we think, rename this program to say how to pay for college. That implies a lot more of a real-world strategy. It implies that there are solutions, there are strategies that are not financial aid-based. We often deal with parents in affluent communities. They won't come out to a financial aid night because they intuitively get that they won't qualify for financial aid. But they will come out for a how to pay for college night. We believe that parents are drowning in information, and what they really want is strategy. tools and techniques that they can use in their homes to be more successful. One of my very good friends, Michelle Iannello from Portland High School, I think summed it up really well, that if we're doing a financial aid night presentation that talks about Pell Grants, or we're doing a how to fill out the FAFSA form, those are monumental wastes of time. Because not only is the financial aid form relatively doable to complete, sure there's some complications, sure they want to make it simple. We believe if you can fill out a tax return, you can do a FAFSA. It shouldn't be that challenging. And second, the vast majority of financial aid that we talk about, the FSCOG grant, all those things, most of the people in Connecticut are not going to qualify for. Why? Because we have to make over 6 figures as a family in Connecticut just to breathe and walk down the street. We live in a very affluent and expensive state, let alone the taxes, and now they want tolls. Okay, we can talk about that. But the point is that the vast majority of the people that we talk with and that you and I know are probably not going to qualify for financial aid, not because of assets, because of income. So best practice number 2 is how do we communicate this presentation? Marketing professionals will tell us that we need to communicate a message 3 different times using 3 different media in order for it to be heard and retained. So I know that you have strategies for reaching your parents and families in the schools. You've got email blasts, robocalls, the school newsletter. Let's do them all. And we will make content available for our partner schools that makes it easy and simple to communicate a message 3 different times in 3 different media. We find a lot of times a school will post something in the calendar, maybe send out an email, and that's it. And unless the school counseling department gets behind it and shows this communication with urgency, we're probably not going to get the results that we want. 2 things that really floated to the surface recently that were very successful. We started rolling out postcards. And these are postcards, postcard size. And on the front, it talks about your event. It says, okay, such and such event at the Cromwell High School Auditorium, 7:30 p.m. For information, contact the school counselor, blah, 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 blah. And on the back, it has more information. The school counseling department is pleased to present this financial blah, 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 blah. Nowhere on there does it say Valark Financial. There's no sales pitch. It comes as if it comes from you. We produce them. We cover the cost. We put our bulk mailing label stamp on it. It's at 0 cost to you. All the expense, even the mailing cost, is on us. You tell us how many you need. We drop ship them to you. And then you print out your labels for your families, have an intern or a school assistant, a student slap them on, they hit the mail. But by far the biggest way we think to boost attendance is to get support from the counseling department, to get behind the program. One of my very good friends, Tor Fisk, in the West Hartford School District, he consistently gets results around 250, 300 persons attending his financial aid night at the school. And we ask him, what are you doing? Robocalls, this, and he says, well, I do that, but we think that by far the biggest result is that I personally talk it up. I get behind the program. When I'm at the basketball game, I'm talking to other teachers and reminding them, hey, you coming to the thing Thursday night? When I see family members in counseling or in the hallway or outside the school while doing bus duty, hey, are you coming to the thing? Constantly talking it up. And really it comes down to the support from the school counseling department that makes the difference. So let's move on. I'd like to share with you these 5 essential dilemmas. And these are scenarios we think that people encounter on a regular basis. I want to show you how to identify them and how to deal with them. And the first and biggest one is parents are their worst enemy. Guys, kids are driving this conversation. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that in the junior year of a student's career, they don't suddenly start getting bombarded with marketing brochures, emails, visits from the recruiters. These recruiters are pushing very expensive. We don't even call them recruiters. This is a sales force who is trying to incent your parents and your students to spend a tremendous amount of money at their very expensive schools. And kids don't know any better. They're talking to their friends in the hallway. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Boston College. Where are you going? Quinnipiac. They get that message, and that's what they want for themselves. Kids have a perception that they are entitled to a certain level of education, and parents are not stopping that, and that's because the kids have done everything we have asked them to do. They've studied hard. They got the grades. They did the debate team. They did the sports. They studied at night. They did the SAT prep. And parents, We love our kids. We want the best for them. So we're not squashing that conversation to say, you can't go to Quinnipiac, it's unaffordable. Instead, we stay, shoot for the stars. This is your time. And kids are buying into it. They want that great experience of the schools with the ivy growing up the sides. And then the recruiters come along and say, would you like a single suite room? Would you like to study overseas? Would you like that nice internship that Northeastern offers? Yeah, we would. But then we start to look at some of the costs on these things, and I don't need to do this in detail. You know this. But what is interesting to me is recently I was updating my slides for the recent school year. I pulled 2016 data and updated my numbers. Previous, it was 2014 data. Sarah Lawrence in 2014 was 60,000, now it's 66. Wesleyan was 60, now it's 67. Northeastern was 55, now it's 66. You know the story. And kids are buying into that, and parents are looking at that and saying, oh my God, how am I ever going to afford that? And that's when they remember student loans. And that's how we run into those very critical debt stories that you and I both know about. So when you see that happening, when you see the kids driving that conversation and the parents not taking control of that and intercepting it early on, there's some tips I'd like to share with you. We tell parents, you've probably done this before. There's an academic reach school, there's an academic safe school. If you're applying for an academic reach, let's also apply to an academic safe. We want those balances. That conversation has changed to financial reach schools and financial safe schools. We say for every financial reach school that you apply to, we want a financial safe school to go along with it so that we have that balance. We also tell parents, listen, you've got to tell your kids, especially the daughters, I don't know why, but the daughters buy into this more, I think, than the sons do. You are not allowed to fall in love with a school until I tell you you are. Because what's happening is the kids are falling in love with the school of their choice. We go to talk to families. You've got 13, 14-year-olds, daughters, and 15, 16, 17-year-old sons. The sons say, I don't know where I want to go to school. The daughter was like, oh, I got this all mapped out. They've got it mapped out from grade 6. They fall in love with the school. And we don't have the courage to take it back from them. We don't want to create what we call the crying daughter scenario. And we've had this story a number of times. So they're not allowed to fall in love with the school until we say you are, and that's when mostly we're sending in the deposit. I mean, it's a done deal. Kids will often say, Dad, Mom, don't worry. I know it's expensive. It's okay. I'll borrow the money. Right? And that's where we end up with, okay, I know the national average for debt's around $30,000. That's just the federal debt. We start taking on the CHESLA, the equity loans, the 401k loans. We very quickly get up to very significant levels of debt. Kids don't know what $80,000 worth of debt means. So don't talk about the level of debt, talk about the payment. We have a very simple formula that we use. Take the total amount of debt divided by 100, that's your monthly payment. $80,000 worth of debt will generate an $800 a month loan payment when you graduate. So now we talk to the kids and say, what would you like to do when you graduate? Oh, I want to be in accounting. Great, okay. What's an accountant make? $50,000 a year? Cool. Minus 20% for taxes. Minus $800 a month for a loan payment. Minus $1,000 a month for an apartment. That's with a roommate. Minus a car. Minus electricity. What's left over for beer and boys? And if we phrase it and describe it like that, I think we start to get some traction there. I had one person I work with, they say, how much debt should I take on? And I've talked with a number of counselors on this, and they say, well, one rule of thumb is don't take on more debt than your first year's salary would be when you graduate. If you want to be an engineer, you make $50,000 your first year, cool. Don't take on more than $50,000 of debt. Otherwise, we end up with the condo mortgage without the condo. And guys, you know this as well as I do. We are in an epidemic of lending. We talk about that the national average is maybe 26. I think I heard a figure that says it's closer to 30 now. That's only the Stafford loan debt. And yes, average, it does account for some of the higher priced kids, but it always also brings into the kids that are borrowing for Tunxus and community colleges. We think the real number for the communities that we're dealing with, which is of the people going to the Yukons and above, we're closer to $60,000, $70,000 worth of debt. And I've heard this mentioned a number of times that families don't often understand what their financial aid package means. I can show you a real-world example of that. This is an email we got from a client a handful of years ago that says, hey, you know, I got accepted to UConn. At the time it was $28,000. And I got some stuff here for support. It looks like total amount due by parents out of pocket's $2,800 a year. That's good, right? That's good. Well, obviously, the problem is the vast majority of what they got is just the additional capacity to borrow. So I think as these letters come in and you're talking with families and students, encourage them to bring their financial aid award letters to you. In our office, we take those, we redact out the names, and we put them into a binder, and we develop a multi-year history of financial aid award letters from schools. So now if someone comes into me and says, I'm interested in Bryant, what does Bryant offer? What history do you have? Well, we go over to our 3-ring binder, pull it up, and say, in 2016, we had a family that went to Bryant and got blah, 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 blah. Which leads to another roadblock, is that parents don't understand what their financial aid outcomes are going to be. They're making decisions about schools before they know what their support is going to be on the other side. So I want to give you a basic mechanical understanding of financial aid. This is a 5-minute discussion, and give you some tools that you can use in your office to talk to families about how financial aid works in a mathematical sense so they can make thumbnail predictions on where they will be for what support they will get. First of all, we have to start with an understanding. Parents don't understand that when they are filling out the FAFSA form, they are actually asking the government to measure their ability to pay. What they believe is they are filling out a financial aid form and inviting the government to tell them how much stuff they're going to qualify for, when in reality it's the other way around. So we want parents to understand that the key word here in the EFC, expected family contribution, the key word here is expected. Parents are expected to contribute to the extent that they can, and that FAFSA form is measuring their ability to pay. I guarantee and promise you that when that financial aid letter comes back and says what your ability to pay is, you will disagree. I've never had someone say, oh yes, absolutely, right before that, no problem. So we want parents to understand the methodology, and the methodology is very simple. It's cost of attendance minus expected contribution or ability to pay equals financial need. So if we put a number on this, let's say we're looking at Eastern. My dad is a year old here. We'll pretend that Eastern is still 18. $18,000 a year for Eastern. We go through the math and we find that your ability to pay is $5,000. Okay, we do the math. That means we have a need of $13,000. That's the amount we theoretically should qualify for in some sort of a support package. So our parents go, okay, I get that. I understand that this number is based on my assets and income, which won't change if I apply to a more expensive school. So I go to UConn. UConn costs more. Great, my ability to pay stays the same. My need goes up. I should get more stuff, right? What's the problem? The problem is two things. First of all, is something we call gapping. And gapping says there just is not enough financial support out there to cover some of these very high costs of school. Cost of school has been rising. Financial aid has stayed the same, if not cut. So we get this gapping where parents may have to pay more than their expected contribution to go to some of these higher priced schools. The other is parents have an unrealistic expectation for what their ability to pay is. I put this number up here, this $5,000, for a reason. And the reason is when we go to talk to families at their home and say, what do you think you can afford in your budget per year for college costs? Invariably, the answer is $5,000 a year. Doesn't matter how much money they make, it's $5,000, that's the number. So we tell folks there's a thumbnail financial planning formula that we can use. We first start with income. And if your income is $100,000 or north of that, $100,000 a year, thumbnail financial planning of income will generate a $20,000 ability to pay from income alone. So if we take a family applying to UConn, we'll say they make $120,000 a year. That's just subsistence level in Connecticut, right? that will generate a $25,000 ability to pay just from income alone, not even considering assets. So we have to help our parents understand that assets is not the problem. I'm very pleased to hear that 529s may, under the new law, might not show up on a financial aid form. Makes no difference. It won't matter. Because incomes in Connecticut take us out of range to qualify for the vast majority of financial aid, and we've got to get parents to understand that. Even after I do this presentation at schools, parents still come up to me and say, I've got these double E bonds here. Should I move them? Will it make... Doesn't matter. So here's a methodology that will help us get through this. I know it's a little hard to see in the slide here, but imagine a little tic-tac-toe board here. Very simple. If you're going to draw any pictures tonight or take any notes, this is the picture to draw. And it says what is going to be assessed and how much. If we look at the assets of parents and the assets of children and income of parents, how does it flow through? Well, any money that a parent has in their name, owned individually or jointly, they want 5.6% of it to go towards your ability to pay. $10,000 sitting in a CD somewhere will generate $560 of ability to pay. We do get to protect about $17,000, but anything above that, 5.6%. And that's where the parents go, oh my God, I need a shovel and a coffee can. And I'm going to take all my money and I'm going to go out and dig a hole in the back here, put all my money in there. I'm good, right? I'm going to qualify for stuff. And even worse, our kids' assets. 20% of anything with the kid's name on it, they want that. Well, I've got to get that shovel. And even financial advisors, licensed professionals who should understand this stuff, will have parents take money out of their name and out of their kids' names and buy an annuity or life insurance as a shelter for financial aid. I can't think of a worse idea. Because the second side of this is it's not the assets that matter, it's the income. Parents' income, they want anywhere from 0 to 47% of their income. At the low end of the scale here, I get that. That's the family that's struggling. But what's scary to me is how fast we get to the 47% level. Kids' income, they want 50% of what kids have. They do get to protect the first $6,300. So the problem here is not kids working, bussing tables, being a lifeguard. We want them working. The problem here is capital gains. We have a stock or a bond or a mutual fund. It's done well, it's grown. And now we sell it to create dollar bills to pay for college. That's a taxable event, it's an income event, and they want half. So the timing and management of when we do things is also important. Parents intuitively understand that the financial aid form, the FAFSA, will ask them the value of some of their stuff and not ask them the value of other things. Financial advisors who know just enough to be dangerous, or even accountants or people who should know this stuff, will say, take all this stuff here, put it all over here, should be good. Well, we forgot two things. Number one, the profile drags all of this back in. And number two, it's not the assets that's the problem, it's the income. And to give you a radar screen on this, we've developed something we call the income hot zone. The income hot zone says we can identify ranges of income where we have a predictable outcome. And the predictable outcome is that from $0 to $60,000 a year, there's nothing for us to do. We're going to qualify for the maximum amount of financial aid available, and that is a package of about $15,000 to $17,000 worth of stuff. Between 60 to 100,000, we're not quite sure because there's some phase outs on some of these. We might be able to wiggle a bit and get a result. But over 100,000, we're going to qualify for what we call the basic package. That's the Stafford Loan Program and work study. That's a known, that's 100%. We know that's a fact. That's what we're going to get. So guys, we got to change the conversation. Financial aid is a terrible word to describe what we get. What we get is a loan package, because it's income that is the issue, not the assets. So in our office, the vast majority of planning we are doing for folks is not financial aid planning. We're doing efficiency planning. How can we pay for college with the least expensive dollar possible? And that leads us to a story about where we think parents need to be more effective with their savings and investments. As you probably know, there is a myriad of investment choices out there, savings plans, and we're asked, I'm sure you are too, where do I put my money? Or I've got double E bonds, what do I do with, what's the best place for me to save? In the state of Connecticut, we believe the absolute no-brainer answer is the Chet Plan, Connecticut Higher Education Trust, because the Chet Plan is the only, and I mean only, plan that will give a state of Connecticut resident a $10,000 a year tax deduction off of their Connecticut tax return. And yet, I still go to see families at their homes and talk about their assets, and I'm seeing 529s from New Hampshire, New Jersey. We saw one, John Hancock. John Hancock runs the Alaskan 529 plan, and I have to ask, did you ever live in Alaska? I mean, do you plan to live in it? Why do we have this plan? And most of the time, the answer is the advisor set them up with a plan that they had an incentive to do so, or went to a book somewhere that says, what's the best plan with the lowest expenses? I don't care about the expenses. I care about the tax deduction. So we need to have the conversation out there that Chet is probably the way to go. Another piece a lot of folks aren't aware of is there's two Chet plans. How many people knew there were two Chets? Yeah. So one of them is run by TIAA-CREF, which many of you are probably familiar with through the teacher's retirement system. And if you go to the publicly communicated and marketed website for Chet, which is getchet.com, you will be on what we call the self-help plan. You'll be completing the paperwork on your own to open the account. You're handling your own investments, your own distributions, and for people who can do that, that's a great fit. It is self-help, there is limited support, and one other problem we think is that the portfolios default to the age-based plan. Age-based says that as the kids are younger, you're going to have a lot of stocks in it, and it will transition to mostly a bond-based plan as the kids get older. We prefer instead the Hartford version of Chet, and that's at chetadvisor.com. My friend Tim Hampson is here from the Hartford with the table in the back. Please spend a minute to talk to him and understand what his program is, because we think it is a world of difference in terms of result. First of all, because it's full service. You get a financial advisor. Remember we talked about that financial advisors don't work in this market and understand it very well? If you have an advisor that recommends that Chet plan, you probably have an advisor that knows a bit about what they are doing. And we think that's a great fit. Second, you get to select the individual investments that you want to use, and that's a critical point I'll show you in a second. And third, you get all the support. Yes, ma'am.
So does the Chet Advisor program also still do like the Baby Scholars program?
Yes, it does. Great question. Does the Chet Advisor do the Baby Scholar? Yes, it does. How many people are familiar with Baby Scholar? So Baby Scholar says in the first year, if you open a Chet account, you get an additional $250 of free money from Chet. Yes?
And if I already have a Chet account on the other one,
yeah.
I think it's easy to switch it over.
Simple. It's very simple. In fact, I talked with my friend Jamal here back at the Valark table, and he can help us get that underway. So just really quick here, and then I'll finish up. I want to talk just for a second about age-based portfolios and why this may become an issue. Most of us believe, and the Chet system kind of defaults to this, that when you have a youngster, your Chet account, if you're on the age-based portfolio, will be mostly invested in fact, in this case, 100% stock. But as time goes by and the kids get older, it transitions to bonds and stable value. Pop quiz. What's the relationship between interest rates and bond values? Interest rates go up, bonds go down. So we are heading into an environment where interest rates are expected to rise and bonds may underperform. So that means if you have a 17-year-old now in 2017 and 18, and you have an age-based portfolio, that means in 2001, when you had a newborn, you had a mostly stock-based portfolio. Who remembers what happens in 2001 that was bad for the stock market? Dot-com crash. So we had dot-com crash, 9/11, some of the worst events for the stock market, at a time when your portfolio in the age-based portfolios is 100% stock. And then we have 10 years of non-performance in the market, and as your portfolio starts to transition to bonds and stable value, it's at the worst time for bonds and stable value. So guys, the problem is not the Chet account. I hear over and again, I'm not using Chet because it doesn't perform. Ridiculous. What doesn't perform is the advisors who don't know this stuff. and don't pay enough attention to this. If we do this right, we will have big money going through 529 plans. And we think that should be managed just as effectively as you would manage your IRAs and 401ks. And we'd love to help parents do that. So 2 more minutes and then I'll finish up and take some questions. College is really a cash flow project. It's not a savings or investing project. Although that's a part of it, it is functionally impossible to save enough to pay for college out of savings and investments. We need cash flow in there as well. In fact, we have a strategy we talk a lot about that's called stacking. And stacking says there is no one single solution to paying for college. It's lots of little things that add up on top of each other, starting with a commitment to put a meaningful amount of money aside for college. Not because we're trying to save enough to pay for the whole thing. We're trying to develop the habit and the budget item of college, leaving the household budget and going somewhere and be setting aside. Now, initially, we think that should go to a Chet. But more importantly, I'm interested in developing that habit so that later on, that money we did send to Chet now gets directed to the university on their monthly payment plan. Second, we augment it with distributions from Chet and other savings. Then we supplement it with the Stafford loan. Everyone's going to get the Stafford. Some people might talk to Chesla to fund a little bit of additional. We might use Scully or other similar scholarships to fill in a few gaps. We might have a Roth account. Roths are actually favorable to pay for college with. We might rope that in. There might be some state-sponsored assistance. And finally, some folks are going to get some tax credits and there may be local support. The concept is all these things on top of each other start to look like a way to pay for college. Then we start to get creative and look at changing out cash value of life insurance for term policies that may be specific steps. In the end, in our office, and we would hope in other places, we will develop a cash flow model. So I'll show you the one that we use. We've developed this in-house, and it's an Excel tool that takes a look at the number of kids, what year they're going to school, what assets we have, what scholarships and support we think we're going to get, whether we think we're going to get work study, finds amount due by parents, plugs in cash flow, stock options, grandparents' money, tax credits, pull it all the way out, and what we now get is a 30,000-foot view on how we're going to fund 3 kids out the door. And we think it's important to talk about all 3 kids in one shot here because otherwise what happens, and you may see this, the older kids, they get this, oh, the parents are excited, we're going to Boston College, we're going to spend a pile of money. Now the resources start to dwindle. Second kid comes along, oh, I'm going to UConn. The third kid's like, Mom, Dad, what the hell? So we have to look at all 3 as a project out the door, and these cash flow models work really well. If you're an Excel whiz, I know you know just what to do. But you don't have to be an Excel whiz. You can do this on the back of a Wendy's placemat. And we think we need to get parents to put pencil and paper together to map this project out and look beyond just the first years and the first student of school. So what did we learn today? We learned that we need to set and help parents set realistic expectations so that when they get to the kitchen table and they are talking to their kids about what's doable, realistic, and affordable in their families, they are coming from a reality-based place. Second, we need to keep debt at reasonable levels. I'm not afraid of debt. I think it's a great tool. Let's just not get too far over the skis on it. And I think we're making decisions for college experiences rather than college value that drives that debt equation. Remember, it's income, not assets, that prevents 98% of the families from not qualifying for grant and federal dollars that are favorable. Let's use Chet. Chet is the no-brainer solution for college funding in the state of Connecticut. And think cash flow planning and management rather than trying to save a pile of money to get you all the way there. I want to share with you a few last resources. First of all is our website. Obviously, we'd love to be a service for you. If we can help you in your schools to provide presentations, that's great. But if you need a resource just to call occasionally and bounce ideas, if you want to send your parents to a resource, we're happy to do that. On our website, we have a video of the presentation that we do. It's the full hour-long presentation. It was recorded at Glastonbury last year. That's on the media/video section of our website. I'd encourage you to take a look. If anything, you'll learn a lot. But second, you'll get a flavor for how we deliver this service. Finally, in your notebook, I'd like to request just a small amount of feedback. In the notebook that we handed out here, there's 2 things I want to point out. First of all is this white paper. This white paper is the deep dive. on all the things that we've talked about today. The reinforced data, all the metrics that help support this, and some of the philosophy that goes into it. If you need to talk to somebody about what we talked about today, this is a tool that will help you do that. Second, if you would kindly let me know how we did today. There's a little feedback form. Just complete it and leave it on your table. I'd love to know what you thought of this presentation, but also let me know if we can be of service. And if you'd like some follow-up, just let me know how to find you. And myself or Stacy or Jamal or Tom, one of our staff will find you. We'll be happy to take care of you. Guys, thank you very much. Thanks for coming out and for coming to this event. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions I can take for a moment while I'm here? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I'm just trying to, all this information is so extremely helpful, and you guys come out every year to both our high schools and do a presentation, and everyone is always so, it's very eye-opening, I think, to a lot of parents. And we're still having a very hard time with a lot of parents in our district that are willing to speak freely or have conversations about this whole college, finding ways to pay for college, because they're shutting us down immediately to say, well, we can't pay for it, so they're not going. Like, there's
Oh, yeah.
questions. So I don't know if you have any advice on working with districts that's very low economic status where you could explain to people. And I know that sometimes it's best for visuals. So, you know, this is how much this person makes. And I don't know, it's just, it's over the 60, it's between 60.
Yes, I know exactly.
So many concerns and questions, and, you know, paying the light bill is more important than saving for college. So I haven't been able to save for all these years.
Absolutely. And just to kind of rephrase and summarize the question, this relates to those parents that might be at, not going to UConn and above, but they might consider and have the resources maybe for a lower cost school, but it's overwhelming. They don't feel like they have the money. They're more concerned about paying the light bill. What's there for them? That is the poster child for the financial aid system. And that person, if we can help them to understand that, may qualify for Pell Grants, certainly the Stafford loan, the FSCOG, but we think it really comes down to school choice. What is the student saying they want to do? 99% of the time, the student is saying, I want this amazing experience that's very expensive, and parents are shut down by that. But if we can get the parents to reclaim that conversation, one of my favorite quotes, in the immortal words of Mick Jagger, we don't always get what we want, but we get what we need. And I think if we can dial that expectation back in the kids to say, listen, you're smart. You're smart enough to get to this place. Be smart one more time and select a value-based education rather than a brand-based one. We can absolutely help that conversation. We have our core program that we do call it our core schools, but we've also worked with my friend up here from the Danielson area at the tech schools to develop a program for that model, and that is available to roll out. Cool, thank you. Anything else while we're here? Thank you. I'll stick around afterwards. Thank you so much. Thank you.